This week on Better Business for Good TV, I spoke with Milla Medeiros from Flow CRM Hub about CRMs, customer relationship management systems, Marianna Barba from Growth Training Group about the importance of good first aid practices for small business, and Cheryl Lardner from Cherry Bamboo about that all-important topic of your ideal client, particularly in a COVID-19 environment. But first, a short message from the Better Business for Good company. Welcome back. My first guest this week is Milla Medeiros from Flow CRM Hub. I asked Milla, what is a CRM? What can it do for my business? And how do I choose the right CRM so it doesn't turn into an expensive white elephant?
So CRM actually stands for Customer Relationship Management System. And it's a piece of software or a system that we use in our businesses to help us getting more organized. So the client journey is actually a better one. It's funny because I used to run my business through Gmail, right, for many years. And I started realizing that I was actually losing track of the leads that I was getting. I was getting leads from my website or through social media or through referrals. And after 2 weeks of these emails coming through, I was like, have I actually spoken to this person? I'm not sure. Oh, hang on. What did I say to them? Do I need to send a form? Do I need to send a presentation? So I was getting actually confused, right? Because I was using my email. There was no way I could track 50, 100 leads, especially when I was running a digital marketing campaign that I was having leads all the time. So it's impossible. So then I started researching about CRMs and what sort of software or tool that I could get to help me, get more organized. And I found out that the customer relationship management was actually able to help me not only with my sales process, tracking those leads and then making sure that I was converting those leads into business, but also my whole operation. So once I've implemented everything, and this was like, we're talking about 8 years ago, before I even created Flow CRM Hub, it was all about, oh my God, how do I get out of this mess? How do I make sure that I am efficient, that I have time to prepare my proposals and work on my business and do the accounts and do everything else that I needed to do? So I am now able to run my business through one platform only. And that's what amazes me. I was able to save about 20 hours of my week. So in one system, and now I guess it's very important to clarify that there are a lot of platforms and systems and tools out there. And if you type in on Google, a CRM for a small business, you're going to find hundreds of options.
So how do you decide?
Exactly. How do you decide which one is better for your business?
Yeah.
I guess this is one of the questions that I get asked the most. And what I like to say is that it doesn't really matter the system that you're going with, as long as the system is flexible enough so you can customize it to suit your business. Right? Because no two businesses are the same. And also as business owners, we deal with our business in different ways. There are a few things that you can use a CRM for. So the first thing is what everybody knows about, which is sales. So yes, you can use the CRM just to control your sales and to have, I guess, an easy way to have your reports on your sales process. The second bit is marketing. So we have platforms that can integrate your marketing activities inside the platform. So you can actually measure and see everything that is working or not working. The third thing is you can have a CRM that will incorporate not only those two, sales and marketing, but also your project. So you can manage your projects inside the CRM as well. And the fourth thing that we can do with the CRM is by integrating all of that and bringing together your accounting. So you can invoice someone from inside the CRM if everything is connected. You don't have to give up if you are happy with the accounting system you're using. All we do is we do the integration inside your CRM and off you go.
So it's kind of like the CRM is the beating heart in the middle, and then you can connect it to all the other things that you use.
Yes, that's a great analogy, actually. So we have all these veins coming through your heartbeat, right? So, for example, I had projects in the past where the client said, Milla, I don't want to give up working with MailChimp. I love MailChimp. I know how it works. And my assistant, also does. I don't have the time to learn anything else. No problem. We can actually connect that MailChimp inside the CRM. Oh, Milla, I use Eventbrite and I'm big on Eventbrite. I run everything through that. Not a problem. We can connect that through your CRM. So now, instead of you opening 10, 20 tabs and going crazy, or have I done this, have I done that? If everything is connected, all you have to do is to pull up your screen. Everything is there, ready to go. All in one screen. You can even control all your social media management, posts, reports. If you have someone working with you, you can just create this amazing pool of systems and tools to help you run your business a lot more effective.
I'm just thinking, some people have said, I've tried a CRM and it didn't work. What was that, because they didn't get all those integrations right, or they didn't have the right system? Or
so you need to understand your process, understand exactly where do you need automation, where do you need a custom built solution, where it's going to fit the CRM and what the CRM is going to do for you. So the first point is have clear goals with the CRM. The second point is really dissecting your sales process and putting everything together on a flow chart and understanding how you run your business, because we have everything in our heads so much. We don't actually, write everything down. We don't talk about it, and it's just bits and pieces all over the shop. So the goal with the CRM is really unpacking everything from a business owner's perspective and putting that or translating that into the system, right? And then another thing that also causes a lot of frustration when people say, I've tried this CRM and it didn't work for me, is because they haven't integrated anything, because they have no idea. So I've paid for this CRM, I've downloaded. What do I do now? It's not connecting to my emails. Well, every single CRM should connect to your email. So if it's not connecting, it's because you haven't learned the platform that you signed up for.
My second panelist this week is Marianna Barba from Growth Training Group. Marianna's business provides first aid training and systems to small businesses. We talked about the importance of good first aid practices for small business beyond compliance. But first, Marianna explains what small businesses need to do to comply with workplace health and safety standards in relation to first aid.
The really important thing that they need to do is have really three things. They need to have someone who's trained in the business, the appropriate equipment, and the documentation around what the procedure is. So depending on their size, so generally the rule is one first aider for 20 employees, and then for 50 you need two, and the ratio grows, and that's in what they consider low risk areas. So if you're in a high risk, so construction or high manufacturing, then the ratios will change, but the code dictates what's required.
So there's a code. So every small business owner should actually know this stuff because they should
Yeah,
have had it.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the challenge. That there's, you know, as a business owner, there's so many things you need to learn about or understand. And this sits under WorkSafe Australia, Australia and WorkSafe Victoria, and both have actually got really great tools for you to understand what's required from a first aid perspective.
It's just you need to know to go and look for them.
That's exactly right. And to bring it together, because it's like, I think the WorkSafe one's like 55 pages. So this is where, you know, you need to talk to people within this space that can sort of say, right, these are the things that you need. It's not hard. It's just knowing what to do and how to put the elements in together.
And as soon as you see 55 pages, you go, oh, crikey.
Yeah,
whereas I think you've got a little checklist, haven't you? So
correct,
we're going to
absolutely.
Yeah, they're going to be able to get your checklist after this anyway.
Yeah,
and then it'll be easy. Fantastic. So you mentioned a 1 to 20 ratio. Does this, like, if there's just, you know, I'm thinking about the local accountant with his perhaps a couple of staff members and a receptionist. Does he still fit within the 1 to 20?
Correct. So technically, if I employ myself, I technically
should get first aid training.
You need to be your first aid officer. So, and you know, you need to think about this that's the legal requirement, right? So that's the legal requirement. But I actually see this more as you know, it's more than just the legal requirement. To be a good employer, you want a safe place to work. You want your staff to feel safe at work. And I think that, yes, that's the minimum, but I think there's so much we can do as employers that, you know, it just helps with the overall, you know, how an employee feels at work. And because first aid's not about the incident, right? It's the noise around the incident that I think causes people a lot of grief.
Can you talk some more about that? What you mean by that?
Oh, so when people think about first aid, they think, right, there's going to be a major incident on site, right? And you know, we need things in place, so we need processes, but it could be simply someone who visits your office and, you know, might feel faint, or, you know, so it's not an emergency where you have to call 000, right? It's an incident that could be they've slipped on some water. What do I need to do, right? How do I make sure that I don't make the injury any worse? And also to think about the other people within the organisation, because them feeling helpless creates other issues, like they feel like we've been called out to places where, you know, the staff have been traumatised by someone just having an asthma attack, which that person is asthmatic and they do have asthma attacks, but because they didn't understand what was going on, they didn't know what to do, and it created stress. So every time they saw that employee, their anxiety went through the roof, because it's like, well, what if he had another asthma attack? How am I going to handle it? So it's just one of those things that it's not about that incident, it's about the well-being of the whole office or the workplace.
That's such a great point. So why do you think that it's not a priority? Why do you think that are there some sort of statistics on the number of small businesses who don't do this well?
St. John's, yeah, so St. John's had a survey, I think it was released last year, about 23% of businesses were compliant. That's how low it is. And
that's 23 were, so that's what 77 were not.
Were not. And is that because they don't care about? No, I don't think that's the case. I think it's a case that they don't realise that they need to do it, and maybe it's a case that they think it's really difficult to implement. So I'm going to get to that. I spoke to a workshop operator only this week, and he's got 15 mechanics. And his response was, I know I need to do it, I don't have time to do it. So it's not the employers trying not to be responsible, it's they think it's a really difficult process, and you know, you need to spend a lot of money to do it. And that's not really the case. And it actually starts with when employees join your company, right?
Yeah.
You know, that they get shown the basics. And you talked about a couple of weeks ago, onboarding of staff. This is one of those things that we need to include. Where's the first aid kit? Who's the first aid officer? Where are the incident reports? Right? It's just about making people know and putting it into a process that it just becomes automatic and it just becomes part of the way that they do business.
So part of the whole organisational culture. So
Correct.
use the word process. So what does a good first aid process look like?
So the first aid, so there's two elements, right? So there's the elements of onboarding staff and what the staff need to know, and then there's also the ongoing reinforcement of what the policies need to be. So things like, and I keep going back to three things. So, you know, I talk about equipment, people, and documentation. Okay, so documentation is when we induct people and how they know what's required. Equipment is, you know, having the right first aid kit. I know it sounds really silly, but I bet you most people don't realise that you're not supposed to put Panadol in a first aid kit. I'm sure you can walk into any, firstly, if you can find the first aid kit, is it being maintained on a regular basis? But I reckon if we all went into workplaces, there'd be things like Panadol in there, there'd be some sort of antiseptic in there. Not technically not allowed, okay? All right. Do we have all the data sheets of the chemicals that we've got on premises, so we know how to deal? So they're the components. So I always go back to people, equipment, and documents or documentation, and that's, if you sort of frame it like that, it becomes, it's not about being easy, but it's really straightforward to maintain. How often do we check that the first aid kit is up to date? Because someone might have taken a whole bunch of bandages because they've cut themselves, which is great. Now, firstly, hopefully they documented it, but secondly, did we put the stuff back?
Yeah.
Did we, and in most cases, it's usually the receptionist or the assistant. It's someone else's job, and no one actually knows who the job belongs to. Yeah, I think the starting point really is, if you can't be bothered reading the code, is download the checklist, because it'll show you what you're missing. So most places have got something, right? The question is what's missing and what needs to be put in there to bring it up to code. So I think that's the starting point. I don't believe that people have nothing. I think that's not the case. I think they've got something. What are they missing? And deal with those and break it into those three pillars. Is it training? Is it equipment? Is it documentation? And once you break the problem down into small bits, it's not that hard to do.
My final guest this week is Cheryl Lardner from Cherry Bamboo. Cheryl is a customer journey mapping specialist. She'll be back in future episodes to talk more about the customer journey mapping process. But as the first step in understanding a customer journey is understanding who the customer is, I started by asking Cheryl, why is this so?
It's a great question, Brenda, and I think, you know, so many people in business get asked this question, or told, actually, rather than asked. You know, you've got to understand your ideal customer. We hear it all the time. And really, essentially, it's a very simple philosophy, because the fact of the matter is that we're not going to be everything to everybody. It's impossible to be that. So if you're focusing your energy on the ones that actually do want to do business with you and get a really clear picture of who your customer is, it's just not going to exhaust you in your business so much as it would if you're trying to be too many things to too many people. But on the flip side of that as well, the really important thing is understanding, how do we communicate? We've got so many different ways that we can communicate. What sort of language do we use? How do we speak? How do we look? What kind of videos do we do? How do our staff dress so that they're appealing to our customer? If we don't know who the customer is and what they respond to, then all of those things are sort of left in a bit of doubt, and you can't be totally sure about how you're going to present your business. I use a bit of an analogy to help people to understand in a really simple form. And I say, think about stand-up comedians, for example, that have to go out on stage. Like let's look at Seinfeld, who's probably one of the funniest guys in modern comedy. If Seinfeld walked out to a room full of people and not a single person in the audience understood English, then he's not going to be funny. And we know he's very funny, but the audience was all wrong. So that's kind of, it's a really rough analogy, but I think it helps people to understand why it is so important for what you're producing, who it is that's going to want it.
And sometimes I think it's really difficult, particularly when you're quite new in business, to hone in on that. And you're going, well, I've worked with this kind of person and I've worked with that kind of person, and I don't want to forget that kind of person. So how do you actually narrow that down and make those decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so easy when you start in business to say, I'll just take anybody. If they want to be my customer, I'm going to take them. And that's true. Of course you are. If someone wants to do business with you, you're not going to turn them away and say, actually, I don't think you fit my ideal customer. So see ya. That's just no way. We're going to say, yeah, of course, buy from me. But it's sort of reverse engineering that. Once you know who it is, then you can start to attract more of that type of person. This is especially relevant with what we're facing now with this added layer of 2020 and the challenges that we're facing with COVID-19, and how people have been thrust into quite a long-term period of where they're changing the way they're communicating, changing the way they're doing things, but also their lifestyle has changed. So for many businesses, previously, if you relied on for example, if your customers came a lot from the hospitality industry or the travel industry, or, areas that have really been highly impacted, you might need to now start thinking about, okay, they're not going to be buying as often from me, or perhaps at the level they did. Maybe I've got different, high-end products. They may not be taking those high-end products anymore because they're going to be starting to be more conservative. So I've got to look at that now and say, well, how am I going to shift and make sure I don't have a huge hole in my business? Do I need to look at another customer segment? Because on the flip side of the terrible things we're hearing about COVID, there's also businesses that have grasped onto some incredible opportunities, and some people and consumers now are making more money than they did before COVID. So there are segments and customers out there that maybe, January this year were not in a position to buy from us, but now they are. So it's really important to analyze all of that and to see, who has my ideal customer shifted because of the circumstances that we've just lived through with COVID-19 as well. So what am I going to do to change my dialogue so I can attract those people that once wouldn't have even looked at my products or my services? So to really define who your ideal customer is, there's one really important question to ask and to answer actually, which is, what's the problem that I solve with the product or the service? What is the problem? Once you know what that problem is, you can now ask, okay, who has this problem? And when you see that there's a lot of these people that have this problem, you can now look at a group of people, say, okay, I've got this, I know this person, but they all have this problem. So what do they have in common with each other? And so you can start to then really build out this profile of who are the people, and that's essentially what your ideal customer is. It's the people that have already got this established problem that you solve for them. Because as soon as you can then start to communicate with them and say, we understand that this problem is, preventing you from doing X, Y, Z, and we are your solution to this to get you to that point. So once you can start communicating like that in a way that is, those people will relate to you, then you're going to start to push forward and you're going to be able to start to move your business and grow your business much more. I'll give you another example. I think examples always help. So if I was a manufacturer of a very innovative, eco-friendly BPA-free, durable, high-end baby feeding bottle. And the bottle is suitable for babies from birth. So I've listed a few things there that are immediately going to be clues to the type of person that is going to want to buy my product. So the problem I'm solving is that I'm enabling parents to feed their baby formula from birth. This can be particularly important for women unable to breastfeed, for example. So I'm starting to really build out a very clear picture of who my ideal customer is. So it takes less work for me to actually go to them and explain to them what problem I'm solving, because it's really easy for them to understand because I understand them. So, you know, all of those things that I just mentioned as well, it's not just about being able to feed your baby from birth. It's also, you know, I'm environmentally aware. So I like the fact that your product is eco-friendly. You know, I'm very aware of chemicals in plastics. The fact you've said you're BPA free means, you know, there's another tick for you because I am of that kind of ilk. I like things that are ethically produced, for example. So all of a sudden, I'm really creating a type of person that I'm going to appeal to.
I'm interested. I was thinking there as well when you were talking about the shift. Can you have more than one market segment or more than one?
Of course. Yes, most definitely. And the thing is, you know, some businesses we work with, we do up to 5 different persona or segments, if you like. And of course, there's your peripherals around them. You're not thinking, okay, this is the one person and it's really rigid. There's always a few little variations for each segment, but you have enough commonalities that you can then say, okay, I know how I need to communicate with this segment as opposed to this segment. So let's go back to the baby bottle. You know, it will be that it's, you know, the ideal customer will be female, but that's not to say we don't want to connect with maybe dad, who can then communicate to mum. So we want to say, okay, what's our communication piece to the father, which would be quite different to the communication piece to the mother. So emotionally, there's a lot of difference there. The mother is experiencing a whole gamut of emotions if she's unable to breastfeed, or for example. So, you know, we're providing some solutions for her that really fit in with her values. But to the father, it's about we're providing your wife a solution. So that's going to assist you in your relationship with your wife. So both are our customers, but we would communicate to them in a different way.
Which probably leads into my next question, which is how do you go about that whole communication thing to make them know, like, and trust you?
Yeah, look, the whole know, like, and trust is a challenge, isn't it? When you think, well, I work on volume, so I'm not going to get to know every single one of my customers. But then that's when your brand steps in and it speaks on your behalf to your ideal customers. Again, a little fun exercise to do with this is ask yourself, why do I like my friends? And why did I choose those people to be my friends? And if you sit down and just spend 5-10 minutes on this and make yourself a list, write down all of the things that is appealing to you about being in that person's life and why they're a friend. It could be the things that you have in common. You understand each other. You like the same things. You like going to the same places. They make you laugh. They listen to you, and they give you really great advice, for example. So if you look at that list and then say, okay, can I apply all of those things to my customers? So if I go back on that list and you think about it from a business perspective, we like the same things. We like going to the same places. They make me laugh and they give me really great advice. So if you start to apply some of those things into the messaging and the communication to your ideal customer, going back to the baby bottle, if we now use that and apply that to how we're going to communicate to mum who's, you know, having a real challenge with breastfeeding, we are going to suddenly have, you know, so many more connections with her, and she's going to say, wow, you get me. You get me.
And that's a wrap for BB4G TV for this week. Great tips and insights from Milla, Marianna and Cheryl, and they've all provided incredibly useful handouts that you can download at bb4g.tv. Remember to follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn, join our newsletter list, or subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single episode. Now to close, here's this week's 1-minute Business for Good idea from Carolyn Butler Madden at The Cause Effect. And we'll see you next week.
Carolyn Butler-Madden here, Chief Purpose Activist at The Cause Effect, bringing you another example of businesses doing good. Future Super is an Australian superannuation fund. They are an ethical investment company. So unlike most other superannuation funds, they don't invest in things like fossil fuels, alcohol, gambling, tobacco, animal cruelty, logging, and other destructive industries. Instead, they invest their members' money into things like renewable energy, wind and solar farms. So when the Australian government provided their support in response to COVID-19, Future Super, their support package came to about $100,000, and they redistributed all of that to their most vulnerable members. So those members who had accessed their super early and who had low balances. Really good example of a business looking after the people who they are there to serve.
Better Business for Good TV. By small business owners, for small business owners.